everyone. I welcome you to the Paramedic Services Committee of Monday, September 11th, 2023. So first order on the agenda is the attendance, and I will point out that Councillor Martin has sent his regrets, and we want to get started right away because we have a couple members that have to leave at 10 a.m. and 10:20 a.m. So at some point, if we lose quorum, we will have unfinished business. Before we move on to the approval agenda, I will point out that we are dealing with the budget in this meeting. If we don't get through the budget, if there's a lot of questions, a lot of debate, we do have a tentative meeting scheduled for next Monday, September 18th, here in the chambers at 1 p.m., strictly for the budget. And again, that's if we don't get through it today. As well, there's a tentative in camera regarding labor relations or employee negotiations. And I will just ask either Russ or Cindy, is there anything that you wanted to update us on, or is that just for possible questions?
That is just in the event that there are questions around wages and salaries.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions around that now? Okay. So again, we'll leave it as tentative, but if after going through the budget and all that stuff, we do have questions, we'll leave it there as a possible item in camera. Okay. So having said that, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda, and I need a mover for that. Moved by Mayor Bailey, second by Councillor Pierce. Thank you. Does anyone have anything they wish to add today to the agenda? Okay, seeing none. All in favor of the agenda as written? Okay, that's approved. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. If you forget and you have something later on, I ask that you bring it up. Okay, today we do have a delegation. We have a couple deputy chiefs, Mr. Robinson and Mr. Cunnane, both deputy chiefs, talking about paramedic service operational community paramedicine dashboard. So,
through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to start it off with the pictures that Nancy has available to us.
Sure.
This will just be very short, and it's an information session. To start off with is our what we refer to as our SAD dashboard. Nancy, the clerk, is putting it up. It's called Situational Awareness Dashboard, but we call it SAD just because of the offload delays. But Nancy, do you have the picture? So this is only a snapshot. The system is actually down. This is a snapshot of what's going on and what our supervisors and everybody gets to see on a regular basis. Up in the left-hand corner, we refer to as our speedometer. It basically shows the number 2 right now, and it shows that at the time this picture was taken, we had 10 staffed ambulances. In the county at that snapshot, it showed only 2 available. If we go over to the next column over to the right-hand side, it tells us how many ACPs and PCPs are available in the county at that time. So there's 1 and 1. You go all the way to the right, it basically shows you the hospital. I know it's not too clear, but it'll show the Brantford General, the Hamilton General, the Juravinski, how many calls they've received in the last 4 hours, and what percentage of them automatically turn into offload delays. So that is tracked once every minute. This dashboard is refreshed every minute. If we go to the far left again, the different color coding areas, it tells us our vehicle number that is out on the call. It shows us our bases. It shows us the type of crew configuration. It shows us the call. And if we follow all the way over to the right, if Nancy can just enlarge it a little bit better, stop there, it starts ticking off the amount of time that crew is in an offload delay. So right now they're on 4 hours, 4 minutes, and 4 seconds for an offload delay, the first crew. Then the one down below that is 2 hours and 53 minutes off on an offload delay. So we can monitor the amount of offload delays that we're seeing at any given time. If we scroll down to the bottom, we look at a historical chart. Just go down to the bottom of the page, Nancy, rate those charts. This is a 24-hour snapshot. So if you start from the far left-hand side, I believe it starts at 7 o'clock in the morning. Yes, it does. And this is the amount, this is call availability. So anything in green and yellow, it's fantastic. Black means we have no available vehicles in the county whatsoever for extended lengths of time. And that on the snapshot that was taken, it continued on to 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. I believe this picture was taken in mid-2022, just to show you the amount of offloads and our delays in responding to calls. So this snapshot would have fed into last year's using other EMS services of 1,991 times throughout a 365-day calendar year. The new pictures that we have right now, if the dashboard was live, which I was hoping to show you, is a majority of the black has been removed. We only have blips of black now. It's majority of green, yellow, and some reds. The evenings are a lot more peaceful than we've had, as you saw the 2 o'clock in the morning when we had no vehicles available. This is basically how we monitor the overall performance. Anybody of our staff get this 24/7, and it is live. Today the system's down. That's why we have a picture. Technology is great. Does anybody have any questions regarding this? This has been an excellent tool for us to look at.
Any questions? Go ahead, Councilor Pierce.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, through you. Yeah, very interesting, lots of data. Now, can you just describe to me, like, this is just at the bases, or they can get it on their phones, or how do they get this?
All of our superintendents have it on their laptops in the vehicles, okay, and they are loaded up in the supervisor's offices, the deputy chief's offices, and my office as well, right? So we can see at any given time what's going on. Perfect. The biggest thing we look at is the comparison in the top right-hand corner. If we know the Brantford General Hospital got hit with 18 calls in the last 4 hours, that's more than they could basically manage at a short period of time. But if they're only getting hit with 2 or 3 and we're still extending 3 or 4 or 5 hour delays, we go back, we need to know what's going on at the hospital, right? Is it overflow that they don't have any beds up above? Is it their staffing shortages? We wanted to look into it a little bit better.
Yep, no, that's perfect. So I think you made mention there, Russ, in the top left corner. Mm-hmm. So you had 10 ambulances deployed, 2 available, right?
Correct.
So I thought we had like 8.5 ambulances.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do it at the 8.5 24-hour vehicles, but during the daytime we have 10 on during the day at 6 at night, which really works out to 8.5 24-hour vehicles. We've just spread them out differently. For costing, it makes sense, but we're putting 10 vehicles on during the day and 6 at night.
Okay. And one last one, if I could. So in the middle section there, that first call, mm-hmm, if I saw the numbers correctly, they were out, they had the patient, they were at the destination in 20 minutes, and then it's a 4-hour delay. They're sitting at the hospital.
That is correct. That's what feeds into our average time on task. We're not working on a patient for 4 hours, but in that 4 hours, yep, our medics are continuing care, taking that patient care until it's actually transferred over, yep, to hospital staff.
Appreciate that. That just really paints a picture when you look at that. You know, they're there 20 minutes and sit there for 4 hours. Anyway, good information. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Sokoli, I can't see you when the screen is shared, so if you have a question, just let me know. Just shout out, okay?
I'm all good. Thank you for checking in.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Russ, so are we still going to have?
Yes.
Deputy Chief?
So, Neil, do you want to bring up your laptop? So Neil's just going to show you what, in the last 5 to 6 years, with the approval of some of the budget items in council, we have this SAD dashboard. This is also another tool that we use when you start talking about vehicle maintenance and what's going on. This is our ACE Tech system that tracks the speed, the location of all of our trucks in a short period of time. And it also sends out reminders to ensure that we do not miss maintenance schedules, because that's one of the ministry requirements to show that we do track and maintain our vehicles. So this right now just shows us live. Neil, do you want to continue? Make sure your light's on.
So this is what we call our race vehicles on these platforms. So this is a live projection of all vehicles in our fleet and literally what they're doing. This refreshes per second. It'll give a vehicle, so we've got a vehicle that's up there, it's on call, we've got somebody who's on emergency call. We can click on that, it will actually tell us its location, its speed, its odometer, whether the lights are on or off, and anything for the system in place, it also monitors seatbelts, G-forces, braking, anything along those lines. So the other component of this, which is very helpful for me, is it also maintains the fleet. So all the vehicles in the fleet are maintained here for all its maintenance and structuring that is on board. It gives us all the things that basically shows you that this vehicle is dispatching now. That has been done already, but this way, paperwork in order to clear that off. This is the same kind of thing that is also available to all superintendents and all the management. This basically shows you all as far as that vehicle goes in track for anywhere, well, anywhere within America for that matter. But it's a picture that we can look at so we know exactly where our vehicles are, but I'm trying to do it out of memory, which is so simple. So it's a fantastic platform, and honestly, without it, we're blind.
Any questions? Okay, go ahead, Mayor Davis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I've got a couple of questions. Not sure if it's directly on point, but I think it is. And certainly is in reference to something else we're discussing this morning, which are metrics, and in particular, the response gradient or timing or metric on resuscitation, the most urgent of calls. I've got a question for you. How do you know when it comes into dispatch that it's that type of call? Someone saying someone's collapsed, or as opposed to someone, say, having a heart attack where it's not as critical to be there in, say, 2 minutes or 3 minutes.
Through you, Mr. Chair, our dispatch has a system of interrogation questions that they ask each and every person. Even if I called in and said I have somebody laying on the ground, right, they're going to ask me the same type of interrogation questions. First thing, is the person conscious or unconscious? Are they breathing? And they were basically determined from the yes/no questions. It is basically dispatched out through the computer system of what it is. If somebody's unconscious, there's a good chance of them being having a cardiac arrest. If they're conscious and having severe chest pain, that's more associated with a heart attack.
Right. So when those calls come in, they're given the highest priority, I assume.
That is correct, sir.
All right. And can you reassign? Say you've sent a paramedic group to someone who's unwell. Can you reassign them on the way to that call to say, no, you're going over here, this is more urgent?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if it is a code 4 is not directed. But a code 3, when you're saying somebody unwell, say stubbed their toe, fractured wrist, or whatever the case is, and it comes in at a priority 3, that priority 3 vehicle could be directed to a priority 4 call, say a cardiac arrest.
And so how do you do that? Who's monitoring it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is monitored, and all vehicle movement goes through our Hamilton Dispatch Center. They have all the information. They have the big picture of anything changing, and they can see, similar to a map like this, that we're driving right by, say, council chambers on a fractured wrist, and there's a cardiac arrest over at the Brant Arena. They can redirect that crew because of their closest crew, but they will not redirect a crew if it's a code 4 for a code 4. Or high priority, just because the equal distance of where it could be, because the other vehicle could take longer to get there.
All right. And if you have any concerns as the chief of our paramedic service about how the dispatch system is working, how do you address it, since we don't seem to control it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, our current system is called the DPCI system. It is older. They are currently trying to roll out the MPDS system that currently Niagara, Ottawa, Toronto, and have already had. Because of COVID, we've still been delayed, but the new dispatch system is supposed to improve our overall response times that we currently have.
Just a follow-up then to that question. Do you have a timeline for that update?
Through you, Mr. Chair, all the timelines keep getting pushed back further and further. We were originally our original launch date was supposed to be fall of 2019.
Okay, but we don't have an updated.
Mississauga just had theirs, I think, recently within the last 6 months to a year.
Okay. Any other questions on Deputy Chief? Or you're
good, Neil.
Okay. Just any questions? Rose, I don't see any. I just got a question. So I'm trying to count to 10. Should I be able to count 10 ambulances on that? 3, 4, 5,
Not in any, so for the most part, what you're seeing is the vehicles that are staffed at this point here. So anything that is on the screen is a vehicle that could be in service, but it also shows vehicles that are at holding locations. So the dispatch center runs on a little bit of a different platform where they're only monitoring staffed vehicles. If the vehicles aren't staffed, they don't show on their screen. So it's an actual vehicle. This screen here literally shows all the vehicles in our fleet and where they're at and what's going on. And then this here slide bar over here will also increases the other ones, which comes all the way down to our superintendent's vehicles, logistics vehicles, and all the other functioning ones. So it's accurate. So there's another one up. Anything that's moving. So green means it's moving. It's on like a low priority call. Blue means it's idling. Red, if we have any that are in red right now, would show that they're on an emerge call. But as I said, it is a per second tracking. And it's very accurate.
Okay, thank you. And just because I know we talk about it later, but it's a big geographical area, as everybody knows, because in looking at that, you've left out huge sections of Ward 1 for the county and huge sections of Ward 4. So, yeah, it's a big county. So, okay, if I see no further questions.
The only other thing, just as a secondary to this, is that it does not show vehicles from other services in our catchment area. So that is the only hiccup that we have. So as Chief King had noted on the SAD board, when we see the areas of black and red on our screen, I mean, we have no vehicle utilization. Realistically, when we have that, we'll also have other vehicles from other municipalities in our area, Sick Nations, Hamilton, KW, and so on and so forth, and they do not show on our map. The CAC Center is aware of them. They see them, but they don't show on ours. So that's the only little glitch that we have, is that we know our crews can hear them over the radio, but we can't see them and where they're at.
Okay, yeah, that would be nice to have a visual on that. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Pierce.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a follow-up on that. Is that the same when we're in other jurisdictions as well? Like, is it an issue with software or?
It is a software issue, and I think it's agreements between services and municipalities, whether we can track their vehicles and vice versa. At this point, we have never done that. I think that is going to be something that'll be inclusive with the new system, as Chief King has mentioned, that's coming on board, which will supersede this. This system that we're looking at here right now is probably going to be getting taken over by a more advanced system, and it'll be better.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, see no other questions. I thank you, Deputy Chief, for your presentation.
Very much.
Can I get a mover, please, to receive that delegation, that presentation? Okay, moved by Mayor Bailey, and seconder. Councillor Pierce. All in favor? Yeah, no, I see that. Maybe it's that delay. Okay, that'll take us to item 5.1, Paramedic Services Committee, and we need a motion to approve those minutes from July 5th, 2023. Can I get a mover for those? Moved by Mayor Bailey, second by Councillor Sicoli. Okay, any discussions on those minutes? Any errors or omissions? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of approving those? Okay. We'll go on to item 6. Any business arising from those minutes, other than what we're dealing with today? Okay, seeing none. Okay, we're going to go into staff reports. There's six different items. We will go through them one at a time. I know sometimes we ask if some are going to be pulled, but I've got 2 I got to pull, plus the budget one, obviously. So we will go through them one at a time. So the first one is the item 7.1. That's the Community Paramedic Palliative Wish Program, and this is simply to be received for information first, but there's also they're looking for approval as well. Are there any questions on that, or Russ, did you want to talk about it at all?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll let Deputy Chief Kinane talk about that, because he was the one that had the original initiative through the Community Paramedic Program.
And this is brand new, so I think it's worthy of a introduction.
Thank you. The report on the Community Paramedic Wish program is essentially an idea through community paramedicine that we would like to incorporate into our current programming to grant essentially exactly what it's named is a wish to those suffering from palliative care and end of life challenges. Many of these individuals have things they would like to encounter while they still can. Maybe things as simple as in the report, returning to a family location from earlier in their life, going to a sporting event, to a beach, etc. We had modeled this proposal after another paramedic service in the region who is currently doing this. And in coordination with some community partner agencies, their family physician, etc., we would seek approval through a referral process to grant essentially a wish to these individuals. 100% covered by community paramedicine. There would be no additional cost to the county or local paramedic services. This would be 100% covered through grant funding. And we feel that it would be extremely important and beneficial to the families and the patients in our community who are suffering these extreme challenges.
Yeah, it's a very interesting program to read about it. Does anybody have any questions for Deputy Chief Councilor Pierce?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think this is great, right off the hop. Two questions I have. So this is covered under the community paramedicine, and I don't mean this to sound negative, but is it taking away from things that we're doing within the community paramedicine right now?
Thank you, Councillor Pierce. No, it would be an addition. It would have no impact negatively on our mainline community paramedic programming. Those would continue in full force. This would be something that would be over and above addition based on referral requests. So, you know, the numbers could be a couple a month, could be half a dozen a year. We're really not sure what those numbers look like until the program gets instituted, but will have zero effect on the daily programming of community paramedicine.
Okay, perfect. That's good to hear that. And then just in your report there, you talk about some wish requests would require partnership with local organizations and agencies. Yep, absolutely. And some, as you noted in there, some of them already do. Do we advertise this? Like, is this known that we're doing this? Because if not, I would assume that if it were to be advertised, you may get more.
Currently, it is not advertised as we're awaiting approval through this committee to proceed and tie up some other issues associated through legal. Once those are in place, then we will begin to reach out to our community partners to look at the partnerships to allow things like tickets and access to certain areas that may be required. So at this time, no, but absolutely, once the approval is in place, we will be proceeding in that manner.
Excellent. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Pierce. You took one of my questions. Any other questions? Okay. See none. My only request is that you report back to us in a year's time just to let us know how, if we could get some numbers, just to see how it's going, because I'm very interested in the program itself. And I understand, you know, not everything you can, not everybody can get their wishes granted. I appreciate that. I mean, I know a member of our community wants to see the Toronto Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup, but we know that's never going to happen. So, other than that, so
Yeah.
can't make every wish come true.
Maybe
Okay.
the Bulldogs.
So, okay. The reports before us, we are looking to receive his information and that we approve the program. So I need a mover, Mayor Bailey. Thank you. And I need a seconder for that. Councillor Sokoli. Okay. Any further questions, comments, discussion? Okay. Yeah. I look forward to hearing back on it. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Approved. And that takes us on to item 7.2, Brantford Community Paramedicine Program Update. Deputy Chief, you're still there. Is there anything you want to present on this one?
I just have a couple of quick dashboards that I can demonstrate if you would like.
Okay, go ahead. And yeah, we'll go from there.
Okay, so what you have in front of you is one of our newest dashboards. When the program originally started, we had zero technology, essentially. Everything was paper-based. We've progressed a long way since then. This dashboard, in partnership with a couple of our vendors, allows us to see numerous different things, and we continue to build this today. So for example, on the far right-hand side, you can see there's a couple of different slider bars: call date, enrollment date. Those are important. The enrollment date essentially is from inception of when we started our electronic monitoring records through to today's current date. And the call date is important as it gives us a reference of time period. The other one to the left of that is the days between account creation and call. So as you can see, the days between account creation and call shows a -60, and on the other side 60. So what that represents is it looks at the 911 calls made by community paramedic clients 60 days before becoming a community paramedic client and 60 days after becoming a community paramedic client. On the lower right hand side, you can see total calls before of 118 and total calls after of 57. So what this is essentially showing us is in that time period of enrollment, no matter when they were enrolled, it looks 60 days prior to that enrollment date, 60 days after. And you can see there's, on average, this one is showing less or more than a 50% reduction in 911 usage through the involvement in community paramedicine. That does fluctuate depending on the time period and the duration of pre and post review. However, it is an average of approximately 50% reduction in 911 calls via enrolled community paramedic clients. It also shows you the current number of total clients enrolled, as well as the number of unique people calling 911 and the number of calls total. So essentially what this is showing is 83 people in that time period have called 911 who are community paramedic clients, but there's been a combined total of pre and post involvement of 175 calls. So essentially meaning that each person on average has called approximately 2 times, and just helps narrow that down. The dashboard also breaks it down. If you look at the left, just to the right of the service logo, it shows it by currently enrolled clients and those who have been discharged. So if I select just currently enrolled, which, yeah, it actually drops it down to 74 and 36 pre and post. The reason this is useful is we can also look at our discharged clients and see there's been 53 calls in total. This then allows us to go back and review those discharged clients and determine whether or not they maybe need to be approached and brought back into the community paramedic programming. The other thing that this dashboard does is it provides us a 911 overview. This, for example, I had set up ahead of time. This shows all of our lift assist calls in the last 12 months. It's 496 911 calls for lift assist, or pardon me, this shows the ones who refused transport to the hospital. The actual number of calls was just slightly over 500. This type of information is absolutely crucial and ties into one of our other proposals, which is the mobile response unit. 496 calls to 911 in the last 12 months to help people get up off the floor, essentially, that were not transported to the hospital. That is an extreme burden on our frontline 911 response system, and that is an area that clearly community paramedicine needs to target. And through our new proposal, hopeful of receiving that funding, this is an area that we would absolutely be focusing on to try and assist with reducing the burden on our frontline 911 paramedic system. We can filter this into anything we need to help Chief King in the future as well. We can look at different hospitals. We can look at strictly cardiac arrest. Many of his dashboards can do similar. This just sort of ties it together and shows timelines, etc. as well. Any questions on that dashboard in particular?
Yeah. Any questions? Councilor Pierce.
I do, Mr. Chair. Thank you. So when you say not transported to hospital, is that because they didn't require that or they refused?
That would be under our legislation. The patient always has the final say whether they go to the hospital or not. They would be a refusal where the paramedics have advised they should go to the hospital for further evaluation, determine if there's an underlying nature of their fall or why they can't get off the floor. This would be the patients themselves saying, thank you very much for the offer, but I'll stay home.
So just if I got that correctly, there was slightly over 500 calls and 490 some odd of them said, no, I'm good.
That is correct.
Okay. Do you have, we'll go on then.
I just have one other, I can't show a live version of this because it does contain personal health information. What this is a snapshot of our remote home monitoring program. Our remote home monitoring program, which is referenced in the report, is a set of vital sign equipment and other devices we deploy to our clients to watch them remotely. And as you can see on the dashboard, their vital signs show up. They're rated different colors based on a medical system that's been developed and used throughout many healthcare facilities as to similar to the SAD dashboard. Green is good, yellow is caution, orange getting more worrisome, and red is sort of urgent, so to speak. The bells that you see here, those bells appear when there's readings that show up that are outside preset parameters that would be considered safe or healthy for the patient. Our team of community paramedics see these bells. That allows them to log in, look at what the situation is. We contact the person by phone, and as a result of that, we either do a virtual assessment with them, we provide an extra in-person visit, or we send a 911 response crew, depending on how critical the situation is. This platform, they are advised when it's installed, it is not for emergency use, that they're always to call 911 if there's an urgent matter. However, we do from time to time catch certain things that are critical that we do have to have a 911 paramedic team intervene. However, the early studies that were done on this through Queen's University, not this exact platform, but the same technology, was a 50% reduction in 911 and hospital admissions through utilization of remote home technology.
Okay. Thank you, Deputy Chief. Any other? Do you want to?
Nope.
Okay. Do you have any questions for Deputy Chief Cunane? See none. Rose, I don't see your hand up, so I will ask my question. The community paramedicine program, I like how you guys give the history. You know, when it started, this is what we've done. And you moved from, we're visiting mostly seniors in their houses, and you've expanded the outreach to homeless, maybe more at risk part of the population. Talk about naloxone distribution and things like that. My question is, given that it's a little bit more at risk activities, I guess. How does the ambulance service ensure that our members are? Do they take extra steps to ensure their safety when they're doing those kinds of activities?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we're working with our outreach program, we are always partnered up. There is no time where a single community paramedic would go visit people by themselves. Through our BDOT program, Brantford Downtown Outreach Team, we're partnered with social workers and nurse practitioners. And through our mental health and addictions program, we're partnered with St. Leonard's Crisis Worker, similar to the MCURT system that the police services have in place. So there never is an instance where they're alone. They always have a secondary and or more personnel with them to back them up.
Good to hear. Councilor Pierce.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I thought the questions were just for the dashboards there. I do have a couple on the report, if that's okay. Okay, so as we know, we've always been told that this is, fully funded by the province. Do the feds ever put anything into this? Are there other, are there other provinces that are having this? Are the feds ever involved with money for this type of support for these programs?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not that we're aware of.
Have we looked into possible funding from the feds for this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, we have not.
Okay. And then I guess it'd be page 3 of the report when you break it down into the program divisions. A couple things on that. First of all, I'd be interested to know holistically, how many average calls there are a day. And again, I don't want to add to the work here, but and then of those, the breakdown in the divisions, is there any way that we can understand the average calls for each? Is it 80% of one type of program and then maybe a little bit of the others, or is it kind of dispersed across the 4 different programs on that?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Glenn?
Thank you. The programs are fairly equally distributed with respect to how many interactions they have with clientele on a daily basis. Depending on the program, for example, our clinic program, they may see upwards of 40 clients in one day. Whereas our home visit program, simply due to the logistics of going home to home, in and out of the home, etc., they may see anywhere from 8 to 12 on average in the home visit program. Our outreach program, they, depending on the circumstance they're in, whether it be a school education, whether it be the downtown outreach, again, the numbers can vary greatly, anywhere between, downtown outreach, they're typically seeing upwards of 30 clientele a day, where, of course, if they go do an educational thing at a school, there may be 300 or 400 students that they speak to. So it really does vary. However, the 4 divisions, so to speak, if you will, are all as equally just as busy as each other.
Good to know. And one final one, if I could, Mr. Chair, and we all understand that the paramedics who are doing this program, which I 1,000,000% support, do we ever have troubles getting enough off to, because this is in their off time that they're doing this work? Do we ever get have an issue getting enough staff to handle this program?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. The program is staffed, as you say, by paramedics from Brantford Paramedic Service. They are part of their regular staff duties where their frontline 911 shifts are backfilled utilizing other paramedics. So this is not over and above their normal scheduled hours per se. They, we do at times have challenges putting people in place, just like the frontline system does, due to staffing, sicknesses, what have you. But it's not through a challenge of them not wanting to work the additional shifts, because they are part of their normal shift distribution program.
Sorry, I'm confused with that, Mr. Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Basically what he's saying is we are funded for 8.5 24 ambulances, and that may equate to 70 full-time equivalent people. His funding is about 10 full-time equivalent people. So if a full-time person applies for the community paramedic program, their hours on the front line would be backfilled. The backfill would be from our part-time staff to make sure the front line. So that's basically, we're sharing the staff over 2 separate budgets.
Okay. So neither one are ever an issue of staffing.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's been an ongoing staffing issue for the last couple of years just because of the shortness of paramedics. For the most part, I'd say for overall staffing, we're about 97, 98% covered most of the time.
Okay, thank you. And I think it's great what we're doing with this program, and here's to it.
Okay, any other questions? And I appreciate the question, Councilor Pierce, because I have the same thoughts too. So when you ask a question, it's not always for your edification, but I think it's for the committees too. Okay, no further questions. I'm going to call the vote. Or did we get a mover there for that? No, we need a mover for that one. Councilor Pierce, second by. We need a seconder. Mayor Bailey, thank you. To receive, all in favor. All opposed. Okay, seeing none. That item is moved for approval or to receive as information. Sorry, that'll take us to item 7.3, and this is the response time targets and performance plan. Russ, can you just speak to, I trust you're going to speak to it a little bit, just given all the numbers and whatnot.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is a project that Deputy Chief Robinson has been working on since about 2019. When it was originally set back in 2016, it was a very obtainable goal at a very low rated number, and we based it on a 15-minute response time. Deputy Chief Robinson has done a lot of work, decreased it down to a 10-minute response time to make things more realistic. I'll let him come up and take a minute or two to explain how he came to the current figures. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, because you're also sorry, and I'm glad he's coming up, because you're also asking for a change to the response
Correct.
time too for CTAS 2.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. The initial performance guidelines were set by previous management years and years ago. They've never been updated. We looked at changing these a few years ago to give a more realistic comparison to our neighbors, especially those that are predominantly urban. We do have a urban rural setting in the county of Brant, which is different than Haldeman and Norfolk, who are listed on there as well, because they're predominantly rural. We have a larger urban area, so we'd like to compare ourselves a little more with Hamilton, Waterloo, and more predominant urban areas. So what we found is all our targets are pretty similar to neighbors, other than the CTAS-2 guidelines. And we think 15 minutes is not reasonable. We have performed well with that, but I use the analogy that the comparison to that would we set an exam pass rate at 50% and then pat ourselves on the back for making it. So it's to move it down to 10 minutes is more in line with what the neighbors are doing. And I did run the numbers from our call stats. And if we drop the CTAS-2 target down to 10 minutes, our actual performance in 2022 was 78%. And we did set a goal of hitting those numbers 80% of the time. 2023 year to date, when this was ran, we actually did hit the 80%, and May was an 83%. So it's not as if we're going to suffer by dropping these down. It makes it a more accurate representation of what we should be trying to achieve.
Thank you. And I appreciate, you got an urban rural mix, and you're trying to juggle both. So, any questions for Deputy Chief on those numbers? Go ahead, Mayor Davis.
Yeah, I've got some questions about this. And first of all, I want to preface this by saying, being in a governance position is difficult. You want to be extremely supportive, and you don't want to be seen as critical, but we have a role to play, and the role that is asking essentially hard questions with a goal to making sure that we aspire to be the best we can possibly be and to continually be improving as an organization. Okay, so it's done in that spirit. So I want to make sure I understand the way this data is calculated. In particular, I'm looking at that. It's I believe page 27 of 66, which is the response time standards, which is what we often look at in our monthly report. So the first number is the response time for that particular category of call, because there's 3 of them, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the second one in the middle, that represents what the target is, the percentage of calls that where that response time to that particular condition has been achieved.
That's correct.
And then the last figure is what's actually been achieved based on the data.
It's our actual performance.
Okay. So if I'm looking at, so for example, Norfolk under the category of SCA, that's the sudden, that's the most serious call, which requires for immediate resuscitation. And so their goal is, if I look at Norfolk, so it's 6 minutes. They hope to, their goal is 50% of all their calls making that targeted response time for that condition, and what they achieved was 44.1.
That's correct.
Okay. And in the urban areas, like for example, Hamilton has got 6 minutes, 75% of their calls are targeted to achieve that, and 87% they actually have achieved that goal. Is that right?
That is correct.
All right, but hard to compare ourselves to Hamilton because they're primarily urban, and we're a mix of urban and rural, where with rural calls, you can't respond as quickly given the length of time it takes to get to outlying reaches of the county.
That's
Got
correct.
that right so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So our category is, our target is 35%. We achieve 40. In comparison to even those that are a mix of urban and rural, we're not a leader of the pack here, are we?
No, we're not.
Okay. Do we have data that shows what the response time is in our urban areas, such as Paris and the city of Brantford? Like, can we delineate between calls that are coming from an urban setting and those that are coming from a rural setting within the area that we serve?
The calls can be broken down to do that. We haven't done that yet for the SCA category, but there's a 78% of the call responses were within the city, so the other remaining 22% were in the county, and it stands to reason that it's going to take longer in the county, as you stated, to get there. And it's important to note that the SCA category is not just for paramedic services. What we're monitoring there is any person that arrives to the patient's side with a defibrillator. That's a target goal. So this includes allied agencies as well, just this one category alone.
Okay. Well, the amount that you set, the target you set inspires your organization to achieve that. Seems to me the 35 rate is, I don't understand why we use that. Other organizations aren't. Why don't we slot something in there that's higher as a target to inspire our paramedic service to try and achieve that target? Are we setting the barrier way too low?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as Deputy Chief Robinson said at the very beginning, right, these original numbers were set by the previous management when the province launched this report card style information for the communities. We have never changed it. We're looking for direction and recommendations from this group to make changes to it right now. That's why we've brought it forward. Our goal could be that we, for 2023, 2024, that our goal for sudden cardiac arrest, our goal this year would be 50%. When we had last year in 2022, our call volume capacity of 115%, relying on outside agencies 1,900 times, right? Trying to achieve a greater goal of the sudden cardiac arrest was a difficulty because of our vehicles being at the Brantford General. Our goal was to improve our crews out on the road now. We're down to 91% capacity, and we're looking for a goal to work towards from this committee. That's why we're changing it. As Kevin said, we all set a bar at 50%. We all pat ourselves on the back, right? We should be doing better.
You're right. We should be doing better.
Correct.
And the response to date has generally been, we need more ambulances. So I'd like some data similar to what we use in police services, which is what we're spending per capita on paramedics compared to these other communities that we're using as comparators, and also the number of ambulances vehicles that they have in comparison to us on a per capita basis. I think I'd like to see that from other municipalities that we're using as comparators. That'll give us another data point that would be helpful. And Chief, you mentioned that we've got there are fewer calls, and that trend actually began, I think, in the spring.
Correct.
Is it any coincidence that we really began talking about that issue in the spring, and there was a bit of a campaign, a PR push to educate people about the options they have in not using paramedic services if the problem they have doesn't really call for paramedic services? We have any idea why there's been a decline in the number of calls over the last 6 months?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's a culmination of multiple things: the community paramedic program, people getting better access to health care. We did the promotions about not using paramedic services and not running to the emergency department for every calls back in the campaign of 2018, 2019 pre-COVID, where there was no result and change. It basically doing it in the spring, the change overall in our call volume, people having better access to health care, the improvements that have been made at the emergency department to get our vehicles out there. It's a culmination of everything all happening at the same time. I don't think it's a coincidence just because of a PR campaign of people saying, don't call a paramedic.
Okay. Mr. Chair, so I'd like to know what I can do, what the committee can do, trying to act in a very positive way. I'm not trying to be critical. At the same time, if you want to improve as an organization, you got to look at how you're doing and be honest about it And can we do better? We should do better on this particular category. And what is it we can do and to achieve a higher target? So I would like to know, does that require a resolution from this committee? Do staff share our concern and aspire to making improvement in that category? I'd like to move forward and do it in a constructive, forward-looking way.
Well, we're gonna, this report is for information, but it's also to change, as you know, the CTS from 15 to 10. If you want to make an amendment to this at that time when we move it, obviously that's your right as a committee member, or we could ask, because you did mention, get more data as far as cost per capita compared to the other ones, and look at their response times, and then maybe take that report and make a change too. So I'll leave it up to you if you want more data before you make an amendment. Or
well, I mean, it's tricky because I think probably we all agree we'd like to. Don't think I'm assuming. I think probably all of us would like to do better. And no matter what organization we're in, what the issue is, we all want to do better, right? And so the goal would be improving the service in that category. And that potentially could have budget implications and complicated by the fact that we're looking at a budget right now. So, but at the same time, I don't like to make rash decisions, and I think we're missing some recommendations to us and maybe some additional data that would help us move forward. But I'm mindful that it's all in the context of budget as well, which further complicates it. So I guess I'm looking for some suggestions or guidance how we can best do this.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Chair. We agree with the portion of the data. We're just trying to, first of all, get a more realistic snapshot of our response times data, right, to come forward for future budget years, to come forward with other recommendations. Looking for getting the approval from this group to go from 15 minutes to 10 minutes, right, gives us a more accurate, as I said, report card regarding our areas. But what we can do before the next committee in November or early January, because this budget will probably be passed by that point in time, is recommendations that other services that have used to improve their response times for sudden cardiac arrest, either it being a PR campaign or more, say, CPR blitzes, whatever they've used in the past in other organizations. That should be our next goal, to improve the 35% or 35% of the time up to 50 or 60, see if that's achievable, and strive for better.
Is that acceptable, Mayor Davis? If I think the direction to staff is we want to do better. If we can do better, we should do better. Let's get some numbers, let's get some data around, and then we can make a better informed decision at the November meeting.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, I appreciate you bringing it forward, because there's nothing in there you said I can't disagree with. So, okay, Councillor Pierce.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Mayor Davis here actually hit the nail on the head to kind of where I was going. First of all, when I read the title of this report, I was like, yes, because, and again, Russ, this is all on the positive side. You guys know how I feel about what you do and how you do it, but we've talked about that 35% for as long as I've been on this committee, which has been 2 terms anyway. We've talked about that 35% as to, how that should be higher, it needs to be higher. And I understand the fact that we're talking rural and urban and that type of thing, but when you look at Norfolk, who I would say is our closest, apple to apple comparison type thing, even they're setting the bar at 50%, right? And I agree. It's one of those that, if you set the bar at 35%, we're making it, we give ourselves, good stuff, that's fantastic. But again, like I say, I appreciate the fact of looking into it and changing that 15 minutes to 10 minutes, but I really thought when I started reading this report, it was going to hit on that 35, and it hasn't. So I agree completely with where Mayor Davis is going here. If it takes more data to figure that out, how we're going to do it, that's great. But I really think for our own good, because to the point, and I'm sure, like you said, everybody agrees here, we need to set that bar higher to strive for that. And can we do it? Yes, we can. It might take something a little different in the way we do things, or it might, in the end, once we look at things, it might take another vehicle or another set of paramedics. We don't know that because we haven't looked at that specific number. So I agree if it needs to be taken away and looked at to come back. But, like I say, I like to, I like to think that we're the best around. But unfortunately, when we look at the numbers, in some of the things we are, but in some of the things we're not, and we need to figure out how to be the best. And whatever that takes, that's what we need to understand. And as far as, you know, looking for direction from this committee to change that, this report was brought forward by you folks and paramedics, right? To say, hey, we're looking at this number, it's 15 minutes. We think we can do better with the data. So I'm going to, you know, swing the pendulum back to you guys to say, regardless of where it is in any of these categories, you're the ones that are living and breathing this on a day-to-day basis. You're the ones that can say to us, hey, you know what? We can change this, or we think we can do this, or we think we can do that. And then we're here to support you however we can. But again, you know, we think you guys are top notch, but let's make the numbers show that as well. And whenever we need to do to hit that number, that's what we need to do.
Okay.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Pierce. Any other questions for the chief? Okay, we're going to go to the motion to receive. We're going to move the CTS to 10 minutes from 15 to 10. And we understand that there's direction to staff for a November report on the SCA to put it in context, and that will be captured in the minutes as well. So can I get a mover on the floor for that? Mayor Bailey, I'm glad you're here this morning. Can I get a seconder for that? Councillor Sokoli. Okay, any further comments or questions? Okay, we'll call the vote. All in favor? Okay. That will take us to item 7.4, and that's the Paramedic Services Statistical Package, and your update as well.
Through you, Mr. Chair, before I go into any details, does anybody have any questions regarding the statistical report that was provided? As it was suggested in the last meeting to also provide some colored graphs and stuff like this, right, to show how the trends are going rather than just looking at the numbers provided.
Yeah, the chart. Any questions for the chief at this time? Okay, see none?
Okay. Just a couple updates from myself. Over the last 4 to 6 months, we've been working on additional funding that we've been asking for from the province. Our offload funding still remains the same at about $146,000 a year. Last year, we got one-time money in January to help out with the offload nurse, but we're going to call her the backhaul nurse right now. We received $152,000 at that time. We used it to our best ability to help with our offloads. It helped partially to get our crews back on the road. We went back and reapplied to the provincial government, and we were just awarded $628,000 as funding to help with the back hallway nurse. We waited till the end of summer because they had a staffing issue at the hospital. We've met with their directors, and we're launching, hopefully within the next 2 weeks, 24/7 back hallway nurse with an additional noon to midnight nurse for the overflow to help out with the, also because their next part is they're going into construction season within the next month, right? So we'll be going in the main front doors right by the Tim Hortons with all of our patients down that long hallway where all the offices are to try to get into Emerge as they work on the first section of Emerge area. So having that additional nursing would be great. 3 of our paramedics are getting the 20-year exemplary service medals at OAPC in Collingwood at the end of the month. And as of Thursday of last week, the Hamilton General Hospital, in conjunction with our base hospital, reached out to us for a research project to do live STEMI catheterization updates, like sending the ECGs by an app down to Hamilton to avoid any long-term. We said we're 100% in support of them using this app, so we're having further conversations in October. So we're trying to improve the patient outcome. There has been it's not at the fault of anybody. There has been a couple false positives going down there. If this basically can improve them getting the approval down to Hamilton General and getting the catheterization that's required, anything to help the overall the patient care, but they want us to be part of the first research project with this new app. And we basically said, yeah, we're going to do it for them, and hopefully get a positive outcome for us, and then it will be rolled out in other areas of the province. And that's the end of my update.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Any questions for the Chief either on the stats or on his updates? Okay, seeing none. Yeah, that's a long hallway that they got to take those patients. Oh man!
Approximately a 30-minute drive.
And how long will that be a situ? How long will that? We don't know, right? How long they have to do that?
For the app, for the research project, no more information to follow. They wanted to know if we had interest.
Okay. So, seeing no questions, move to receive. Moved by Councilor Pierce, second by Mayor Davis. All in favor? Okay, and we'll note that Councilor Sokoli did have to leave at 10. Now I know we're going to lose another member at 10:20. So this will take us down to item 7.5, and that's budget to actual as of July 1st, and that's Heather. Heather, is there anything you wanted to point out other than we're doing pretty good as far? You guys made a good budget, anyways. I think you're sticking to it. So Heather will not present. So I'll get a mover on the floor just to get on the floor. Mayor Bailey, can I get a second? Councilor Pierce. Any questions on that? Budget to actual? Okay, seeing none. All in favor for information to receive? And opposed? None? Okay. Now, this takes us on to the budget, 7.6. If we don't go through it again, I do like to see a full committee when we're dealing with budgets, especially one of this nature. Having said that, we will follow the process and until we lose quorum, if we lose quorum. But again, if we don't get through it today, we do have a tentative meeting scheduled for next Monday at 1 o'clock. So we will start. And Cindy, you're gonna, okay, yeah, you have a few slides you want to go through. Okay, so let's do that. And then we'll get to the actual motions or recommendations in the report.
Okay, thank you, and good morning, everyone. For those of you, I guess I've met you all. I hadn't met Councillor Sokoli, but I am Cindy Stevenson, General Manager of Emergency and Protective Services for the county, and this portfolio includes paramedic services. So I'd just like to take a few minutes to walk through some highlights of the draft 2024 paramedic services budget this morning. Myself, Russ King, and Heather Mifflin are here to answer any questions that committee might have. So I just want to touch on the budget process. And our timelines are directed from the county-city shared services agreement, similar to the social services agreement. Our budget process is first out of the gate, and this provides time for committee and both councils to incorporate the budget into their respective budget processes. The committee will meet today as our first review, and there's a special meeting scheduled for next Monday, as Councillor Miller stated, if we're not able to get through the budget today, and any questions or follow-up that the committee may have. Just want to highlight that October 1st is our first target there that we're aiming towards. Committee is to recommend a draft budget and forward the draft budget and detail to the city and the county. So this is just a summary of the service, and I think everybody knows that we're responsible to deliver pre-hospital care and emergency health service for the city and the county of Brant. We also provide innovative community paramedicine programming, which has been highlighted during the committee meeting today. And we're dedicated to provide compassionate, patient-centered care for our communities. So 2023 accomplishments, in addition to regular response to calls, we've added 2 additional 12-hour ambulance shifts. One started March 1st and one July 1st. We've continued work on the new headquarters project. And as mentioned, we've secured additional provincial funding for the CP program and just recently our dedicated offload nurse program. In 2024, we're looking at continuing work on the new headquarters project, collective bargaining with OPSU, and we're looking to add additional management and administrative capacity to support effective strategic and operational service oversight. Our 2024 budget drivers. So these will be also highlighted in the operating budget overview. One is the annualization of the 2023 staffing increases, so the 2 new 12-hour shifts, and recognizing that full year impact in 2024. Increases to salaries, wages, and benefits. So there are some increases associated with cost of living adjustments, as well as increases to our benefit premiums. Increase of transfer to reserve to support our capital asset replacement program. And you likely saw in the package that this is a fairly significant item. And this is just to meet our 2024 asset replacement needs for 3 ambulances and the 9 defibrillation units. Lastly, inflationary increases to medical disposal supplies, fuel, and vehicle maintenance. So this slide here provides a summary, and it's also in your package for the 2024 proposed operating budget. In the top, it notes our revenues are increasing. Again, this is 50% of the 2023 budget with no inflationary increase. We haven't received that from the province now for a number of years. And under expenditures, some of the big ones I just talked about, medical supplies was about $138,000 expected increase, fuel and vehicle maintenance $54,000, and transfer to reserves for vehicles and equipment $450,000. And the last large item is an increase to salaries, wages, and benefits. And part of that again is the annualization of those 2 new 12-hour shifts. This slide provides the 10-year capital plan and reserve forecast. So you'll see here that our opening balance for 2024 is just $61,000. Contributions from operating, we're proposing to increase up to $980,000, so that includes the additional $450,000. And this will just be enough to fund asset replacement program in 2024 with a small ending balance of $37,000. Keeping the transfer to reserve at the $980,000, you'll note that this, if remains steady, will fund our 10-year capital replacement program as currently stated. This slide shows the 10-year capital plan forecast and what we're eligible to fund from development charges. So nothing in 2024, but there are funds coming in 2025 and beyond. The budget package also includes 2 decision packages for committee's consideration. The first is the creation of 2 commander level positions. So the service has increased in size and complexity significantly since inception in 2000 without evolving the management structure. Commander positions would operate between the deputy chief level and the superintendent positions. These roles are needed to support supervision of superintendents, indirectly to paramedics, and operational requirements such as conducting investigations, health and safety oversight, deployment, labor relations, and emergency planning. And the new role will support existing administration staff and enhance our positive work culture, work-life balance, and further develop succession planning for the service. The logistics technician, this is a new position needed to support effective and efficient management of critical resources, inventory, and equipment, ensuring service quality, and would work to optimize procurement with the opportunity for some cost mitigation. Both those positions are proposed to start March the 1st of 2024. And just lastly, I'll end with highlighting some ongoing and future challenges, much of which have already come up during committee discussion today. So the first is the provincial funding formula, which is based on the previous year with no inflationary increase. Experiencing persistent inflation and market and supply chain conditions. Our service growth, eroding capacity of our management staff. And anticipated increase in call volume. So I know there has been a bit of a dip over the last few months, but it's expected that that will increase given our community growth and aging population and dealing with our broader health care system pressures. And that concludes the overview. Staff are happy to answer any questions.
Okay, at this time, we won't put anything on the floor, but we will, we're going to be looking for information. So are there questions from the committee for either Cindy or the chief or any staff? Go ahead, Mary, you go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Cindy. So, assuming we're probably going to be having a meeting next Monday to deal with this because I got to leave in about 5 minutes. So, can we get that data for next Monday, which is the spending per capita in comparison to those other comparative municipalities and the number of vehicles we have?
Through the chair, I expect we will be able to get the per capita. We do participate in, different surveys and things like that. So, and I think the service will do our best to see, on a, I guess, secondary level, what those services actually operate in terms of number of vehicles, et cetera. Okay. That will be a little bit more of a challenge, but.
And on the capital plan, when I went through that, I recall that one of the reasons that we're doing the arrangement with Grand Bridge Energy, which is a lease rather than a buying of the building. And I was told we did that because for capital costs, the province will pay something that's like a leasing cost, but it won't pay a capital cost. So why don't we do the same thing with things like vehicle and equipment purchase, lease rather than purchase as a capital item, so that it's built into the base operating budget and province pays its share rather than province paying none of this.
I will try and tackle that somewhat, and Russ may need to chime in, or Heather. I am aware that we do lease some of our vehicles, so we do have not necessarily ambulances, but more frontline vehicles that we have an arrangement through our fleet and have a lease set up that way where we are in fact retrieving some of the costs back to the province for that. I'm not certain if we're actually able to do the same thing for something like an ambulance. So it might be something we need to look into more, or perhaps Russ would be able to answer that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are programs out there for the replacement of the defibs. We did a cost comparison a few years ago. For an example, if it cost me $250,000 to replace 10 of them, if you even did the 50-50 funding with the province, it will still cost us the same amount of money that we're currently due, but it's spread out over years rather than actually just lump sums every 5 to 7 years as we do the current replacement. Stryker was one of the other competitors that first came out with it, and we did a comparison for their maintenance package that you had to buy and all the additional stuff. So we would be spending the same amount of money today as we do in capital from onto the city and county levies, but it would be spread out over the 5-year term of those rather than in 5 years asking for $250,000.
And so when was that done?
That was done in 2019.
Okay. And are there other services that enter into leasing arrangements for their vehicles and some of the major equipment items?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is no lease program that I'm aware of for ambulances or the equipment inside. Deputy Chief Vanderpost has done an excellent job that when we do another vehicle, our auto loads, our stretchers and stuff like this are transferred over to our new ones, but we are unaware of people for the purpose of ambulances as they are considered frontline vehicles, and most leasing organizations will not lease that vehicle because of the wear, tear, and everything happens with them. But for defibs, there is a possibility.
Have you thought about doing something a little innovative, which would be using one of your municipal service corporations they buy, and then the municipal service corporation leases to the service, trying to take advantage of that, the way the province funds capital costs?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Excellent idea. I don't understand where the limitations are. I'd have to rely on Cindy and Heather on what the legal expectations are on using an organization, as you said.
I realize it's not something you can do overnight, but is that something can
future
look at that perspective, that angle at it?
Yeah, we'll look into that and
at
least be able to provide some information back next week.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that you can get. I think we got to look at being creative for sure, because if the province is covering leases 50% or 44%, whatever it is, versus nothing on the, if we buy it outright, it makes sense to trying to lease it. So appreciate the questions. Any other questions on the budget, Councilor Pierce?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So on the, I guess the proposed operating budget, the second line there, dedicated nurse. Is that different from what the province is? Like I thought the province was funding that nurse.
So we received through you, Mr. Chair, we received the funding through the province of the $146,000 for the first offload nurse, and it's just a flow through to us, and the hospital basically bills us and we pay them.
Okay, I appreciate that, but so at the end of the day, it's not coming out of our pocket. I'm just wondering why it's on our budget.
To you, Mr. Chair, Cindy.
It's just because it is a revenue, it's showing as revenue, and I believe we've included that in previous budget years, so didn't want to exclude it and then have the question as to where is that money. It's there showing that it is a revenue.
Sorry, it's shown as a revenue, but it's also shown as an expense, but the overall net effect is zero.
It's zero. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I was just trying to find it on the expenditure part of that. That's all. Okay, that's fine for that. With the insurance, I guess I'm trying to. I guess like everything else, insurance is going up everywhere, so that's fine. Cross-border billing, the numbers that we're seeing, our cross-border billing is actually going down a bit. So I'm wondering why this is going up like it is.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it was a forecast of what we're going to experience in 2024 if all the numbers stay the same. It's basically what we've already had. I think 889 usages already this year as of August 30th. We're trending at about 1,100 use year for cross-border billing. We hope the calls will go down. It's come down from the 1,900, but we're trending to make sure that we have enough money in that operating line so we do not have to come back and ask for additional funds.
Okay, I appreciate that response. And then on the 10-year capital plan, so refresh my memory here. What's the average lifespan of an ambulance?
Through you, Mr. Chair, 5-year frontline, 2-year spare. Okay.
So if I think back over the last couple of years, and we're going to use the 10 ambulances that we were talking about earlier, I think 2 years ago, I believe did we get one new one or two new ones? And then we got 2 new ones for 2023, and then 3 for 2024, 3 for 2025, 2 for 2026, and 3 for 2027. That's a total of 11 ambulances, plus the 2 from this year. So does that mean in 2027, which realistically is only 3 and a bit years away, that every ambulance will be brand new, in essence?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, and we have more than 10 ambulances. Our current fleet, I believe, is 17 or 18 ambulances that we currently have, including spares. We've had to keep our vehicles longer because of supply chain issues.
Right. So I appreciate that.
Everything's just condensed into a shorter period of time because we had 2.5 years without any new vehicles. So as you say, realistically, yes, by 2027, almost every one of our vehicles will be brand new. And then, in the next 3 years.
Okay, so, and again, I don't want us driving around in a vehicle that's unsafe or, not reliable and stuff like that. But I'm curious, if we have that many in the fleet, and over the last couple of years, we've replaced potentially 4, and then in the next 3 years, we're going to replace 11 more. I'm just curious, do we need to replace that many in the short term? Because if we look at 2028, there's none. So is it possible that we could do any shifting with those?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've already shifted ones from the years that we didn't have anything dealing with COVID. Now everything's coming. If you look at, say, 2027, I don't have the capital in front of me. I don't have my glasses on. But if it said we were doing 4 vehicles in 2027, we can always put off 2 additional vehicles to 2028 as it gets closer at that point in time. We're just more concerned right now with supply chain. They told us that we were supposed to get our brand new vehicles at the end of July. We still have not seen them. Our cost and our overall maintenance and engines and transmissions, that's one of our biggest drivers that we have currently in this year, that we're going to be over budget on that line item. But anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000, but savings in other lines. But yes, we were just condensed more because of COVID.
Okay. All right, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pearson. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess I can squeeze one more in before I have to go. So with the extras, Cindy, the decision items, if those were included in the budget, what are the percentage increases to the city and county?
Through the chair, so the commander positions with a March 1st start date would have an impact overall of 4.3%. So that is,
This is the information on page 3 of 7.
yeah, I have the full package here.
It's 252,000. This is what I'm reading for the
Yeah.
city, 96,000 for the county.
Yeah, and actually,
information you're
overall it's 4.3, but I don't see the breakdown for city and county. I'm not sure if Heather has that
It's right here.
handy.
Or the percentage.
It's the
The
percentage.
amounts are there, but I don't know about the
It's
percentage.
the percentage I'm
Yeah.
interested in.
Yeah.
Mind you, we could figure
Yeah,
it
because
out.
right
Figure it out.
So without
Yeah.
those items, the percentage increase is around 11%. I think, is it? I think it's around 11, isn't
It's
it?
11.1% overall. Yeah.
11.6 for the city, 10% even for the county.
Right.
And then that's without the decision package. Throw in the decision package, like I say, we could do the math and throw in that 252,000 on this.
Yeah, I mean, I could do, I guess, as well, but I'm not that good with math, so we could have that by next.
Yeah.
I'd appreciate it by next month.
You, Mr. Chair, it will bring it up to 16.6%.
Okay, that's 16.6. In the county, Heather? Well, you've got the calculator out.
Sorry, that was the net. That was the net one.
Okay. At this point, Mayor Davis, I appreciate you sticking around as long as you did. Having said that, we'll finish off with questions even after release. We won't have quorum, but at this point, we will officially be having a meeting next Monday. And if you could, maybe Councillor Sokola and Councillor Martin, who weren't here, could at least watch the presentation. It is available on YouTube, so because I don't want them to be.
Yeah, I know we have all of our diaries for next month.
Yeah. Okay. Again, I appreciate you staying as long as you can. Okay, so I will look to the remaining members. Are there any other further questions on this before we break for the day? Seeing none, just one question. Cindy, this basically the 11.1%, which, you know, it's a big number no matter how you slice it, but this is a stand pat budget. Is that correct? At the 11.1%. We are not adding services. We're just doing what we committed to do.
That's correct. That is to maintain current level of service for the city and the county.
Yeah. Okay. Like I say, it's a big number, but I don't know. So, any further questions then before we break? Okay. Seeing none, we will call this meeting. So, are we suspending the meeting, or are we just adjourning, and then what's the official term?
We can adjourn and then
Okay. All right. No further questions, comments? Okay, so we will adjourn then today. Again, Russ, I hope to see you next week, and thank you to the